5 years behind bars. All because my wife conspired with the sheriff to frame me for a crime I didn't commit. I trusted her, loved her, but she tore my world apart. Discovering their affair was just the beginning. They used their power to destroy me, planting false evidence and bribing witnesses. But they underestimated my resolve. I built a hidden security system, capturing every deceitful act. Now, with footage of their conspiracies and corruption, I'm ready to bring them down. They turned me into a monster of vengeance, and I won't stop until they pay. The ultimate showdown is coming. Isaac Manor stood in front of the gate after 5 long years in prison. He saw the admissions committee, his ex-wife, his ex-daughter, her parents, and his brother waiting. Isaac turned to the guard and asked, "Is there another way out? I don't want to go through this crowd." The guard, surprised, said, "Don't you want to see your family?" Isaac shook his head. "I have no family. They all betrayed me, and there's a restraining order. I'm not sure if it's still valid." The guard thought for a moment. Isaac had always been helpful and friendly. He called the gatekeeper and said Isaac would use the emergency exit. Leading Isaac through a maze of corridors, they reached a small steel door. The guard unlocked it and let Isaac out at 2:30. Lydia, Isaac's ex-wife, looked at her watch and asked her father, "He was supposed to be released at 2, wasn't he?" Her father nodded. Lydia went to the gate and asked the guard when Isaac would show up. The guard checked and replied, "He was released half an hour ago through the back door." Tears welled up in Lydia's eyes. "Why the back door? We came to welcome him back. Do you have his address?" "I can't give you his address, ma'am. He asked me not to tell anyone, and he mentioned a restraining order. Do you want him back in jail after all he's been through?" Lydia turned pale. "A restraining order? Oh no, I forgot about that." Meanwhile, Isaac walked quickly to the bus station, thinking about the past 6 years. He had plans and people to meet. 6 years ago, Isaac was happy, married to Lydia for 18 years, and in love with his 16-year-old daughter, Tommy. He was a 40-year-old software engineer who wrote his own programs and built self-learning robots as a hobby. He was working on a security project, rewiring and reprogramming systems with backups and hidden links. His house had a hidden camera system and an independent power source with solar panels. He also built a secret backup system in his garden. Isaac needed good security because his company worked with the government. His house was big, at the end of a cul-de-sac, with a spacious office and a large garden. At 20, he bought the plot and built the house with profits from creating an internet search engine, which a software giant bought. Isaac was an average-looking man, 6 feet 2 inches, 190 pounds, with dark blonde hair, light brown eyes, and a friendly face. He loved biking and walking, but avoided strenuous activities. Though shy, he became charming and witty once he opened up, a good conversationalist who could talk about many topics. He was an avid reader, recalling information quickly, which helped in his work. 6 years ago, Sheriff Peter Ramsdale asked Isaac to update the traffic light program to reduce pollution. Things went wrong when Isaac invited the sheriff to dinner to discuss the project. The sheriff immediately took a liking to Lydia. It took 6 months for Ramsdale to act on his feelings. One morning, Isaac finished the project and went home to celebrate, planning to take Lydia out for dinner. In the driveway, he saw an unfamiliar car. Inside, he found Lydia with the sheriff. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted. The sheriff smirked at Isaac and mockingly said to Lydia, "Oh, the little one has learned." Isaac's lawyer, Ben Green, sat across from him, sipping his coffee. "So what's the urgent problem?" he asked. Isaac explained, catching Sheriff Ramsdale with Lydia and Lydia's threats. Ben looked alarmed. "Peter Ramsdale? That's bad. He's corrupt and no one can prove it. You need to protect yourself." Isaac's mind raced. "I'll give you power of attorney. Print the documents and I'll sign them. Handle my finances if things go wrong. Start the divorce too." Ben nodded. At 9:30, as Ben prepared to leave, the door burst open. 5 policemen rushed in, knocking them to the floor. "Which one of you is Isaac Manor?" one officer shouted. Isaac, face down, mumbled that he was the man they wanted. "You're under arrest," said the officer. "For what?" Isaac asked, stunned. "Abuse charges. Your wife and daughter filed them." "I didn't touch them," Isaac protested. Ben intervened. "Isaac, stay quiet. I'll handle it." He turned to the officer. "Where are you taking him?" "2nd Street," came the reply. As Isaac was led away, Ben called out, "Be careful, Isaac. Don't say anything without me." Ben locked the flash drive in his safe and told his fiancée, Anna, what happened. He rushed to the station on 2nd Street. After waiting an hour, he was told Isaac had been moved to Forest Lane. Ben suspected Ramsdale was trying to keep him away from Isaac to force a confession. He rushed to Forest Lane. At Forest Lane, he was told Isaac was at 2nd Street. Frustrated, Ben called a judge he knew. He explained the situation, and the judge asked to be put on speakerphone. The judge's voice boomed, "This is Judge Orlando. It seems the police are preventing Mr. Manor's attorney from seeing his client. Gentlemen, ensure Mr. Green can meet his client immediately. Is that correct? 3 broadcasts before noon is too much." "No, sir, it's just a clerical error. Manor is on 2nd Street." The officer stammered, thinking, "Damn, Sheriff Ramsey can kiss my ass next time. I'm not taking the wrath of that judge on myself." When Mr. Green arrives at 2nd Street, he will have immediate access to Mr. Manor. Understand? Mr. Green will speak to an unharmed Mr. Manor as soon as he enters the station. No bruises, no accidents, no questioning without a lawyer. Clear, gentlemen? Now your names, ranks, and badge numbers, please. Both men were sweating despite the air conditioning. When the call ended, the supervisor offered to escort Ben to 2nd Street. There, Ben found Isaac waiting in a cell. Ben pulled out a voice recorder and pressed the red button. "Isaac, have they tried to interrogate you?" "Yes, they tried. They also tried to intimidate me, threatened me with a baton if I didn't confess to hurting Lydia and Tommy. I told them I wouldn't say anything without my lawyer." "Did they treat you well?" "No, I haven't had a drink since they brought me here, and they didn't let me use the bathroom until just now. Then they gave me some terrible tea. I'm scared something bad is coming." "I'm sorry, Isaac. I'm scared too. This is all too planned out. Have you been moved to another station?" "No, I've been here since my arrest." Ben took a deep breath. "I'm handing your case to a colleague. I'm a family law attorney. I'll handle your divorce. My colleague is better for this case. Is that okay?" "Yes, that's fine. Just remember to use your power of attorney." 6 months later in court, Isaac stood no chance. There was photographic evidence and testimonies from Lydia, Tommy, and 2 women Isaac had never met, claiming he had violent tantrums. Isaac couldn't provide an alibi because his hard drives failed during the examination. He didn't want to reveal his backup system. He might need it later. The prosecutor painted him as a terrible father and husband. Lydia and Tommy sat awkwardly, looking unhealthy, but Isaac didn't care. He sat stoically, waiting for the verdict. The jury found him guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 5.5 years, minus pre-trial detention. With luck, he'd be out in 3.5, but Isaac expected 4 or 5 because of Sheriff Ramsey. As the judge read the sentence, Isaac heard Lydia sigh. She looked ashy, and Tommy was crying, eyes bulging. Only Peter Ramsey grinned like the Cheshire Cat. Back in his cell, a woman visited him, handing him a thick envelope. "You have been served." Isaac gave the envelope to his lawyer and asked him to give it to Ben Green. Left alone, Isaac sank to the hard bench in despair. 2 weeks after his sentence ended, Ben visited to discuss the divorce. In the envelope were divorce and adoption papers for Tommy to be adopted by Peter Ramsdale. Isaac signed them, though it hurt. Then he reviewed Lydia's demands with Ben. The house, half their savings, $5,000 a month for 5 years, and a trust fund for Tommy's education. Ben smirked but stayed silent. Finally, Isaac asked, bewildered, "That's it? If I sign this, they'll leave me alone?" Ben, still smirking, replied, "Yes, that's right." Isaac paused. "The house was mine before marriage, so that's non-negotiable. Board it up, fence it, turn off the water, but keep the electricity. Since Ramsdale is adopting Tommy, he can pay her tuition. Can you do that? 5 years at $5,000 a month is $300,000. Just pay it in a lump sum. Half our savings is $700,000. Offer her around $1 million and tell them to take the lump sum. No house, no trust fund. Otherwise, we'll start a war and make it ugly." Ben gathered his things and assured Isaac he would make a counteroffer. Before turning off the recorder, he asked, "Didn't Lydia know about the investment fund?" "I mentioned it now and then, but never told her how much it was. Has the city paid for the traffic light software upgrade yet? I'm guessing not." Remind them if I were you. The $175,000 is your fee. I may need your help again in the future. Ben left, feeling both sad and happy. Sad that his friend would spend 5 more years in prison for something he didn't do, but happy he could now afford the house he and his fiancée wanted. But first, he had to get the $175,000 from the city. Ben knew they were obligated to pay, but they would likely try to avoid it. The next day, Isaac was in his new cell after the warden's speech. He found himself face to face with the biggest man he had ever seen, known as K2, the biggest bully in the prison. K2 was writing something on a piece of paper. Isaac cleared his throat politely. K2 growled, "If you tell anyone I can't write well, you'll regret it." Isaac was surprised and asked, "No one taught you?" K2 looked up, surprised. "You're the first person to ask. I've worked since I was 8. I'm trying to write a letter to my grandmother. She's turning 87 next week. Can I help? If you tell me what you want to write, I can write it down for you." "No, I want to write it myself. When I'm done, you can rewrite it." "That's a good idea," Isaac said, smiling. K2 clapped him on the shoulder. "Careful, I'm not a mountain. Do you want to learn to read and write? I can teach you." K2, with tears in his eyes, said, "Yes, I would like that, but don't tell anyone." "Why would I do that? You're trying, and that makes me want to help you. My name is Isaac. What's yours?" "I'm Fabian Small. Don't laugh. Everyone calls me K2. K2 is the second highest and most dangerous mountain in the world. Maybe you need to keep up Fabian's reputation," Isaac said, smiling. K2 laughed, and the ice was broken. K2 dictated his letter, and Isaac wrote it in big letters. K2 copied it without trouble. Soon, lessons began. After 2 weeks, Isaac got a phone call. He had visitors, though he wasn't expecting anyone. His brother had scolded him during his only visit and said he wanted nothing to do with him. He only expected Ben, who wasn't due until next week. In the visitor's room, Isaac saw his soon-to-be ex-wife and daughter. He walked to the table, looked at the guard, and said, "Come to gloat? Here's your chance." Turning to the guard, he added, "I've had enough. I want to go back to my cell, please," and walked out. Lydia wailed, "Isaac, please wait." But he didn't stop. Isaac asked the guard, "Is there a way to stop this from happening again? They put a ban on me, and now they come to rub it in. I don't need such visitors." The guard said he would talk to the warden. Ben and Isaac sat in a small conference room for attorney-client meetings. Ben, as usual, let out his noise emitter before speaking. "I have an amended divorce proposal here." Isaac raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean amended? More money?" Ben replied, "No. Lydia is willing to give up half the money if she can talk to you." "I'm sorry, Ben, but you will tell her that I would rather pay $500,000 than talk to her or her friends and family. That's my message." "Isaac, that's a very expensive decision. You know that, right?" "Yes, Ben, I do. But I've been humiliated enough. Pass on the message and may they rot in hell." Ben sighed. "Okay, I'll do as you ask. Is there anything else I can do for you?" Isaac smiled. "Yes, there is. I need children's books for reading, from level 1 up to the highest level, 2 for each level." Ben's mouth dropped open. "Why do you need those? Did they mess with your head?" "No, but keep it a secret." "It's for my cellmate. I'm teaching him to read, and he's getting good at it. Now we need books," Isaac said. Ben smiled. "That's so like you, Isaac. I'll take care of it." The following week, a package arrived for Isaac. The guards and prisoners were curious. One guard unpacked the books and commented on Isaac's intelligence. Isaac just shrugged and accepted the comments quietly. Back in the cell, K2 was upset by the comments, but Isaac laughed. "Don't worry, we know better. Now start on these 2 books. I'll have questions for you when you're done, so read carefully." K2 grumbled. "You want me to read books? I just want to learn so they can't trick me." "You're wrong, my friend. Reading books helps you recognize words more easily, which is useful for reading newspapers and other things. Plus, books are fun. Trust me, start reading and make sure no one notices," Isaac insisted. K2 sighed. "Okay, I'll try, but only because you called me a friend." Isaac smiled. "Aren't you? I'm Isaac. What's your name?" "I'm Fabian Small, but everyone calls me K2. K2 is the second highest and most dangerous mountain. You need to keep up Fabian's reputation, Isaac joked. K2 laughed, and the ice was broken. K2 dictated his letter, and Isaac wrote it down. Soon, lessons began. After 2 weeks, Isaac got a phone call about unexpected visitors. He wasn't expecting anyone, as his brother had cut ties with him and Ben wasn't due for another week. In the visitor's room, Isaac saw his soon-to-be ex-wife and daughter. He walked to the guard and said, "Come to gloat. Here's your chance. I've had enough. Take me back to my cell, please," and walked out. Lydia cried, "Isaac, please wait," but he kept walking. Isaac asked the guard, "Can you stop this from happening again? They put a ban on me, but now they come to rub it in. I don't need this." The guard promised to talk to the warden. Ben and Isaac met in a small conference room. Ben let out his noise emitter before speaking. "I have an amended divorce proposal here." Isaac raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean amended? More money?" Ben replied, "No. Lydia is willing to give up half the money if she can talk to you." "I'm sorry, Ben. Tell her I would rather pay $500,000 than talk to her or her family. That's my message." "Isaac, that's an expensive decision. You know that, right?" "Yes, Ben, I do, but I've had enough humiliation. Pass on the message and may they rot in hell." Ben sighed. "Okay, I'll do as you ask. Anything else I can do for you?" Isaac smiled. "Yes, I need children's books for reading, from level 1 up to the highest level, 2 for each level." Ben's mouth dropped open. "Why do you need those? Did they mess with your head?" "No, but keep it a secret. It's for my cellmate. I'm teaching him to read and he's getting good at it," Isaac explained. Ben smiled. "That's so like you, Isaac. I'll take care of it." The next day, Isaac entered his cell with difficulty. He had bruises all over his body. K2 got up and helped him to his bunk. "What happened?" he asked. Isaac caught his breath. "My wife wants my house. Her friend, Sheriff Peter Ramsey, sent me a message. Give up your house or you'll be beaten." K2 growled. "I don't care if they beat me to death. The house is mine. God, it hurts." "Can you describe them?" K2 asked. Isaac gave a description of one man before going to the prison ward the next day. 4 men were admitted to the ward, severely beaten. The message was clear: leave Isaac alone. Over the next month, K2 proved to be a quick learner and a voracious reader. He sent other inmates to Isaac, who became known as Doc Isaac. About 10 inmates now needed instruction. One day they discussed life after prison and the difficulties of finding a job. Many nodded, having been in prison before. Isaac asked what kind of businesses they would like to start. One man, with only 4 months left, admitted he wanted to open a bakery. Isaac asked him to write a plan. K2, also in the class, said he wanted to work in security. Isaac smiled. "It takes a thief to catch a thief. I have an idea. If it works, you'll be my head of security. Deal?" K2 agreed, and they shook hands. During Ben's visit, Isaac shared his idea for an investment fund to help ex-convicts start businesses. Ben agreed to handle the legal side while Isaac managed the finances. Isaac asked, "What else is on your mind?" Ben replied, "I talked to Lydia. She signed the divorce papers and only wants half the savings, no alimony. She was upset by your response, and I think she realizes you don't want to talk to her anymore. She won't claim the house, and she won't ask for Thomas Nina's education fund. I brought the papers for you to sign." Isaac signed the divorce papers, surprised that Lydia had changed her mind. 6 months later, he was a bachelor again. He thought he'd feel free, but prison life had become his norm. He and Ben's investment fund was doing well. They had helped many prisoners get jobs or start businesses, and their investments were now profitable. Isaac was highly respected in prison, and any newcomer who tried to mess with him quickly learned proper manners. Isaac even got a separate room for his lessons, as the guards and wardens saw how he calmed the other inmates, making their jobs easier. One day, a welfare worker asked him, "Why aren't you up for parole?" Isaac replied bluntly, "Because the warden is a friend of Sheriff Ramsdale. His reports on me are always negative. I don't even want parole. If I get out, who's to say my parole officer isn't also one of Ramsdale's friends? They could put me back in prison for no reason. I'll be out in a year and truly free." "You don't have much faith in the legal system, do you?" the worker asked. "No, ma'am. I was set up by the sheriff and my ex-wife. I can't prove it, so don't talk to me about a fair legal system. Is that all, ma'am? Yes, I'm sorry to bother you. Don't worry about it. The prisoners are happy with my presence. Good afternoon." The woman looked concerned as Isaac left. Isaac went to his self-defense class, though he didn't like it. K2 insisted on it. In his almost 4 years in prison, Isaac had lost his body fat and gained muscle thanks to K2's training. After a recent event, K2 also started teaching him how to fight to disable opponents quickly. On his way back to his cell, a guard stopped him. "The warden wants to see you. His office now." "Damn! What now? Am I in trouble?" Isaac thought, feeling a knot in his stomach. Outwardly calm, he said, "Yes, sir. Do I need to clean up first?" "No, you can clean up later." 5 minutes later, Isaac found himself in the warden's office. The warden dismissed the guard and looked Isaac over. "You might want to clean yourself up first." Isaac stayed silent. The warden continued. "I was told you know something about computers. Is that true?" "I was a computer programmer in a past life, warden, sir." "That doesn't answer my question. Do you know anything about computers?" Something felt off. If the warden had computer problems, why not call the IT department? Isaac took a chance. "Sir, a computer has 2 parts, software and hardware. If it's a software problem, I can probably fix it. If it's hardware, it might be harder. There's nothing wrong with the machine. Now sit down and start looking for the problem." The warden left the office. Expecting a trap, Isaac started checking the computer. He saw the internet icon prominently displayed. They knew he had asked for internet access several times, always denied. He decided not to use it. He began his search and quickly found a keylogger. Cheeky, he thought. He found several problematic directories and files, poorly hidden by an amateur. But he didn't tell the warden. Isaac waited by the desk until the warden and the guard returned, looking disappointed. "Did you find the problem?" the warden asked, annoyed. "Yes, sir. I can explain it in private, please." The warden nodded to the guard to leave. Once alone, Isaac spoke softly but firmly. "I found a huge amount of images and movies on this computer. I also found a program that records everything typed on the keyboard. The downloaded video contained a worm that's slowly destroying your files, including program files. You could try to blame me, but the internet connection is monitored by the ISP. My lawyer can prove I didn't connect to the internet. I can fix your problem, but I need the internet to download some cleaning programs." The warden looked pale. He had tried to trap Isaac into getting illegal internet access to extend his sentence. Now he had a bigger problem. "Fine. You have unlimited internet access. Fix it." "No, sir. Not until my lawyer writes that I'm not responsible for your computer's contents and that you are giving me unlimited internet access." "How dare you!" the warden shouted. Isaac remained calm. "Or you can call the city's IT department." "Who's your lawyer?" the warden muttered. A week later, late at night, Isaac was called in. The warden didn't want anyone to know an inmate was fixing his computer. Isaac disabled the keylogger, compressed the files without deleting them, and hid them so another programmer could find them later. He then installed his chosen internet software and started fixing the computer. Once done, Isaac checked on his home security system. To his shock, the house was nearly destroyed. He saw Sheriff Ramsdale directing men to carry something, shouting, "Come on, we haven't got all night. It's got to be in the streets tomorrow." Isaac saw his chance for revenge and began to plan. He wrote a small program to make his security system viewable and downloadable and ensured it worked. He replaced the keylogger with something similar but less detectable. Finally, he destroyed the malware but left a small problem to reappear in a year. Just as he finished, a supervisor burst in. "Are you done?" he asked impatiently. "Just finished, sir. If there's any problem, call me." "I'll call and I won't be so lenient. The guard will escort you back. Dismissed." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." Isaac returned to his cell. K2 looked at him and said, "What are you up to? You look like the cat that swallowed the canary." "Revenge, Fabian. Revenge. Do we have anyone lined up to talk to Ben Green? I need to deliver a letter. Do you have a pen and paper?" A week later, an FBI agent read Isaac's letter with growing confusion. The letter explained what had happened to Isaac and what was going on at his home, ending with a series of numbers and a password. She asked the lawyer, "Do you have time? I need to consult our IT people." "I've got all day," Ben said, suppressing a grin. The agent was thrilled. If the information was solid, they could finally nail Sheriff Ramsdale. The IT specialist came in with computers and hard drives. They confirmed it was Isaac's house and were shocked by its condition. After that, they let Ben go. The letter stated most of the action happened late at night. Shortly before Isaac's release, the house was in turmoil. When Peter Ramsdale came to speak to a lawyer, loud and rude, Isaac smirked at him. Isaac couldn't help himself and laughed loudly. Ramsdale became furious and shouted, "What are you laughing at? I still have friends outside. They'll take care of your wife and daughter, and when they're done, we can always sell them to a brothel." K2, who had been planning his future with Ben, flinched and saw Isaac turn pale. K2 looked at Ramsdale with fierce hatred in his eyes. Isaac was distracted by his visitor. She led him into a small conference room and pulled out a device from her bag, similar to the one Ben always used. Finally, she said, "Thank you. Your signal helped us catch them in the act, along with the records from your security system. He's going to jail for a long time, but that's not why I'm here. Because of the sheriff's activities, he owes the IRS a lot of money. Normally, when someone reports tax fraud, there's a reward. We thought we'd give you this reward as a thank you. We don't know the amount yet." Isaac marveled at the effort they put into this and replied, "I'm grateful. Thank you. I'm happy enough to see him behind bars." They talked more, with the agent trying to figure out how Isaac had accessed his security system. Isaac smiled and dodged the questions. He still had a score to settle with the warden for taking away his privileges and keeping him in prison with negative reports. That night, Peter Ramsdale woke up in his high-security cell. He was very dizzy and uncomfortable, lying on his back with his arms and legs stretched out. He tried to roll over but realized he was tied down. "Did you threaten Doc Isaac? You'll pay for that. If you mess with him again, it'll cost you more," a voice said. "We can get to you anytime, anywhere. If anything happens to Doc or his family, we'll come for you. Nod if you understand. Also, you should apologize for the trouble you've caused." The former sheriff nodded vigorously. Shortly after, a guard led Isaac through the prison maze and watched him leave through the back door. Isaac boarded a bus and bought a ticket. He needed transportation, communication, and a place to sleep for the night. That's where the X.com services network came in handy. After 45 minutes, Isaac got off the bus and walked for another 30 minutes until he reached a parking garage. "Doc, you're out. Welcome back." "Want a drink?" someone greeted him. Isaac smiled. "No thanks. I need transportation. What do you have for me?" The man smiled back. "Ben told us you were coming. I picked out a Nissan truck. It's clean, low mileage, and has a powerful four-wheel drive. It's right here." Isaac looked at the truck, smiled, and said, "It's perfect. How much?" The man looked shocked. "I can't charge you after all you've done for me." "Nope, can't do that." "I'll settle for a discount. No freebies and don't argue," Isaac insisted. The man sighed. "Ben predicted that. We'll figure something out." Isaac waited for the paperwork to be sorted out while enjoying a cup of tea. A little while later, he started the truck, familiarized himself with it, and then headed out to visit his trusted friend. Late in the afternoon, he settled into a comfortable chair with a deep sigh and said to Anna, now Ben's wife, "It's been a long time since I've sat in a chair like this." Anna smiled at Isaac. She was very fond of him. She and her husband had visited him in prison many times, and she knew Isaac was innocent. She noticed his face was haggard, with many disturbing wrinkles. His eyes, once soft and bright, now held sadness. His face was no longer as easy to read due to his beard. However, his manners were still those of a gentleman, courteous and gentle. Isaac brought her flowers, still remembering Ben and Anna's wedding day, though he couldn't attend. She told Isaac that Ben would be home soon with Indonesian food, his favorite. Ben entered the hall with great enthusiasm. "What's that ugly sapphire blue truck doing in my driveway?" Ben laughed as he embraced Isaac. "Welcome back, Isaac. I'm so glad you're here." Isaac nodded, suddenly at a loss for words. Anna stroked his back and quietly said, "It's okay, we understand. Take your time." Isaac flinched, shook his head to clear his thoughts, and said, "Sweet home." The spell was broken. "Isaac, what do you want to drink?" "Beer?" Ben asked. Isaac thought for a moment. "No, just some sparkling water. I haven't had a drop of alcohol in 5.5 years." I'll keep it that way. Anna started to serve dinner, but then stopped with a tray of delicious-smelling food in front of the two hungry men. She smiled and said, "Now that I have your attention, I have something to say. We will dedicate this evening to celebration. Tomorrow you can go fight dragons again. Deal?" Both men immediately agreed, signaling the start of a very enjoyable evening. For the first time in almost 7 years, Isaac felt calm and relaxed. At the end of the evening, Ben told Isaac that they had already prepared the guest room for him. Isaac felt a little awkward. "This is too much. I can go to a hotel." Anna insisted, "I won't hear of it. You'll spend the night here. Tomorrow you'll probably want to go look at your house. I don't think you should go alone, so we'll go with you." Isaac gave in. "I am in your debt now. I'm dead tired. Please show me where I can sleep." Anna replied firmly, "We're your friends, Isaac. Get that into your thick skull. You paid for most of this house with the money from the traffic light project. Ben will show you the way. Tomorrow is a new day." Much more gently, Anna added, "Sleep well, Isaac. Don't forget that we love you too." Isaac didn't sleep well that night. The bed was too soft, and it was too quiet. He missed K2's snoring and the noise from the prison, but eventually he fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, Laura watched people pull up to the house at the end of the street. They arrived in 2 cars, stopped at the gate, and got out. 1 woman and 2 men. Since the FBI had used her house as an observation point before the raid, she was wary of strangers. She pulled out the binoculars the FBI agents had forgotten and looked around carefully. A man and a beautiful woman, clearly in love, waited as a thin, bearded man got out of his blue truck and looked around. She focused on his face, noticing the crow's feet around his eyes. When he turned, she saw his light brown eyes filled with pain. The couple looked at the man with compassion. All 3 walked through the gate and into the house. The lone man returned to his truck, picked up a crowbar, and joined them inside. Laura put down her binoculars and prepared to pick up her son from school. Isaac walked through the ruins of what had been his home 6 years ago. Everything seemed ruined. The furniture was stained, chipped, and damaged. The kitchen was dirty and broken. There was a foul odor in the bedrooms, and the whole house smelled worse than a public restroom. Electrical wires had been cut, the ceiling torn down, and all electronics and valuables stolen. Isaac wondered if he could ever make this place his home again. He left the house and headed to his truck, where he opened the back to get his supplies. Yesterday, he had bought folding chairs, a camp bed, a sleeping bag, and other camping supplies, along with toiletries, clothes, and towels. He began carrying everything into the house. When Laura returned with her 10-year-old son, Timothy, she saw Anna talking to the sad man. It was at this point that Isaac finally lost his temper. After assessing the damage to his home, Isaac felt his resolve crumbling. His former life was gone, replaced by a shell tainted by misuse and bad memories. He laid out his bed and kitchen utensils in the cleanest room he could find and was about to rest when Anna asked softly, "Isaac, is this a good idea? Ben and I can see that you're very anxious. Please come back with us." That was the last straw for Isaac. Isaac collapsed into the chair by the front door, letting go completely. Sobs shook his body, tears streaming down his face and soaking his shirt. He cried out in frustration, pain, and grief, shaking Anna to her core. Ben rushed out of the house and hugged Isaac tightly. "It's okay, Isaac. We're here for you. Let it all out." "I've got your back," Ben said softly, whispering to Anna. Finally, he's showing some emotion. It took Isaac a while to calm down. He finally hugged his friends and said, "Thank you. I wouldn't have known what to do without you. I'm calm now. The way they treated the house was just unbearable." Anna, still worried, asked, "Are you sure you want to stay here? Please come with us." Isaac smiled slightly. "I'm fine now. I need to get a new phone and start taking care of business. This is my house, and I'm going to make it my home again. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Can I have your phone numbers? I only have Ben's office number." They handed Isaac their business cards and headed to their car. As they were about to get in, Laura approached them. "Good morning. I'm a neighbor. Can I ask you something?" Laura said. Anna looked at her. She had a beautiful face with worry lines, light brown curly hair, and moved gracefully despite being slightly overweight. Anna answered a bit curtly due to all the emotions she had been through. "You can ask questions, but I don't know if I can answer them or if I even want to. By the way, my name is Anna, and this is Ben. I'm Laura Winstead. I live there with my 10-year-old son, Timothy. I was wondering if your friend is okay. It's been a rough neighborhood lately, and I'm worried about our safety." Ben laughed, but Anna replied, "Laura, your neighborhood just got a lot better. Isaac will be fine. He just needs time." Laura wasn't relieved. "So he's not dangerous then? I'm sorry to ask, but it's been so bad." "Isaac? Dangerous? No, he's one of the gentlest people I know. He'll probably be the best neighbor you've ever had," Anna said before getting into the car and driving off, leaving Laura confused. Isaac walked through his house. He noticed the wires in the fuse box hadn't been cut, only the fuses were missing. The small black box hidden above the door seemed untouched. It was the fuse box for the solar panels that powered the backup security system. The other panels powered the system outside, which had caused Peter Ramsdale's downfall. He went to his old office, now filled with trash and empty boxes. His desk, covered in dirt, still stood against the wall. Feverishly pushing everything aside, he flipped the desk over and found the hidden hatch. Behind it, the backup security system blinked green. "It's still here," Isaac thought. "This has turned out to be a very worthwhile hobby." Assuming it was still working, he was confident they hadn't found the cameras or microphones. Otherwise, they would have torn the house apart to find the system. He needed a computer or laptop to check it. Isaac never took notes. His memory served him well. He spent the afternoon shopping for a phone, ISP, flash drives, and a small generator since the solar panels wouldn't meet all his needs. He returned with a truck full of supplies and dinner. After eating, he called Ben. "Hey Ben, it's Isaac. Do you have a pen and paper?" Isaac gave Ben his cell number and new email address and asked for a list of X.com companies. A few minutes later, Ben replied, having anticipated Isaac's needs. The next morning, Laura looked out her window and saw her new neighbor sitting in the morning sun, using a laptop and talking on the phone. Curious, she did some research online and was puzzled. The man had been in prison for 5.5 years for assaulting his wife and daughter. To get such a sentence, he must have been very cruel. But this man and woman told me he was harmless, Laura thought, and decided to be cautious. Today, she only had Timothy to take care of since she was working part-time. She wished she had more hours, but her employer was very inflexible. She was having breakfast with Timothy when a van pulled up to the house. The side read, "Zone by Services," with the slogan, "We've had a hard time learning, but now we do honest work at an honest price," followed by a phone number. She saved it to check online when Tim was at school. Two men got out of the van and greeted Isaac with smiles and handshakes. They had a thermos and a large bag. Isaac laughed, and they all went into the house. Isaac noticed his neighbor watching again and thought, "Word will get around soon. Maybe we should hold off on introductions for now." He then started giving instructions to the men. "Let's clean everything up. Start with the kitchen, bedroom, and my office. Everything can be scrapped. If you're unsure about anything, just ask." That afternoon, a truck arrived and unloaded a 40-yard dumpster. A short time later, Laura saw a minivan with the X.com services sign. A woman got out, gave directions to the others, then walked to Laura's door with a large bouquet of flowers. She rang the bell, and when Laura answered, the woman handed her the flowers. "Regards from Dr. Isaac for the inconvenience. If we're too loud, just let us know," she said before walking away, leaving Laura surprised. Laura looked over to the other house and saw Isaac at a table by the door. He looked up and waved. She held up the flowers, waved back, and went inside to find a vase, feeling strangely happy. 2 weeks and 2 dumpsters later, the house was cleared of the past, and Isaac and the contractor had plans to restore the interior. Only his bedroom and part of the kitchen were usable. Isaac was sitting at his usual spot near the door when it started raining. He retreated under a shelter he had built next to the house, enjoying the fresh air and the sound of the rain. He heard a car engine stall and saw Laura in a panic. He grabbed his umbrella and walked over. "Good afternoon. We haven't introduced ourselves yet. I'm Isaac Manor, your neighbor," he said, smiling slightly. "I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry. I have to pick up Tim, my son, from school, and my car," Laura replied, worried. "From the sound of it, your car isn't going anywhere. You can take mine, or if you're not afraid of being seen with an ex-con, I can give you a ride," Isaac offered. Laura was taken aback but finally said, "I'm more afraid to drive that big truck of yours. Would you mind driving?" "Sure, grab your coat and hop in. I need to lock up. Maybe I could help with your car?" Isaac suggested. "I can't afford it." "My ex," Laura began. "Neighbor, I said help. No strings attached, no payment, just a friendly gesture and maybe a cup of coffee," Isaac interrupted. Laura felt embarrassed. "I'm Laura Winstead. I apologize for being so rude. Yes, please, if you can get it running again," she said, hopeful yet apprehensive. Isaac pressed speed dial on his phone and put it on speaker so Laura could hear. "Doc, how are you and how can I help you?" came a voice. "I'm doing fine, Keith. Could you call Joey to check my neighbor's car? The keys are in the ignition. We're picking up her son." "Sure thing, Doc. Anything else?" "Have Joey call me with news, please. And did you know K2 is scheduled for the parole board next week?" "Mr. Green is informed," Isaac said, laughing. "That's good to hear. Need anything else?" "Thanks, Keith." "No, that's all for now," Isaac replied. Laura looked confused. "When I try to make an appointment with a garage, I have to wait at least a week. How is this happening so fast?" "Don't worry about that," Isaac assured her. "Joey's already on his way with the truck." "Are they always this quick to respond?" Laura asked, surprised. "No," Isaac replied. "I helped them set up the business. That's why they respond quickly for me. And let's be honest, you probably looked me up online and heard the rumors. But the truth is, Ben Green and I founded Bex Con Investments and X.com Services to help ex-cons start their lives over. It's working well, and that's why I get a little extra service." Laura looked at him in a new light. If only he hadn't mistreated his ex-wife and daughter. Pulling up to the school, Laura waved to Timothy, who was waiting for her. "That's our neighbor's truck. Cool. Why is it here?" Timothy asked excitedly. "Our car broke down again," Laura said sadly as she helped Tim into the cab and buckled him in. Isaac turned and said, "Hi, big boy, I'm Isaac. If your mom doesn't mind, you can call me that too. Now let's get you home." Back at the house, Joey took Isaac aside. "Doc, this car is a death trap on wheels. The motor's wrecked, but everything else is worse. What do you want to do?" Isaac thought about what Laura had told him and asked, "She can't do without a car. Do you have anything in stock?" "I have a nice little Nissan Rogue. It's not a pretty color, but it's safe. Should I ask her?" Joey replied. "No, just take this one and swap it. Send me the bill. I can't have dead neighbors or kids on my conscience," Isaac said firmly. Joey walked over to Laura and said, "Excuse me, ma'am. I need your car keys and ID, please." Laura was close to tears. "I need this car. I can't afford the repairs." "Don't worry, ma'am. Doc's already taken care of it. I'll bring a replacement tonight," Joey reassured her. "Isaac took care of it? Is he always like this?" Laura asked, stunned. "And call me Laura, please." "You have no idea, Laura. He's one of the nicest people I know, honest, intelligent, and generous. He never asks for anything in return. Everyone helps him because he's helped so many of us. He's paying for this whether you want him to or not, and many people owe him. And personally, I don't believe for a second that he hurt his ex. I've seen him in prison. He just doesn't have it in him. I'll see you after dinner," Joey said before leaving. Meanwhile, Isaac finally found the courage to open the backup hard drives. Plugging them into his laptop, he began to check the recordings. The first recording started as soon as he had installed and activated the system. He watched in silence as his wife and Sheriff Ramsdale conspired against him. They planned to fake injuries and accuse him of abuse. Ramsdale would handle the rest, ensuring Isaac's compliance. Isaac sat in silence, tears streaming down his face. He felt utterly betrayed. He scrolled forward through the recordings and stopped when he saw Ramsdale in the house again, plotting with other men. Ramsdale's chilling words echoed in his mind. "This man has become a nuisance. He must be silenced forever. Throw him in the lake with a concrete block around his ankles." Isaac stopped the surveillance, shut down the hard drives, and called the woman at the FBI. When he finally got through and explained what he had witnessed, they arrived quickly. Isaac had already packed up the 2 discs and handed them over. "I need certified copies of the records from these dates," he said, giving her a note with the dates. "These records show I was framed and imprisoned despite my innocence. I'm going to settle some scores." Meanwhile, Lydia was working as the prosecutor's assistant, a job Peter had organized for her. She had managed to survive because she had stopped seeing Peter shortly before he went to prison. She felt some guilt towards Isaac, but if Isaac had just given up since she had sworn an oath in court, there was no turning back, and she had already paid a heavy price for that. Her daughter barely spoke to her because of that, and also because they manipulated her into cooperating. She was just finishing the letter when the prosecutor and the woman entered the office. "Lydia, could you come into my office for a moment?" As she entered the prosecutor's office, the woman said, "Please close the door and have a seat." On the large television screen set up in front of them, the woman identified herself as Agent Smith of the FBI and showed her identification. She sat down and said, "We are reopening the Isaac Manor case." Lydia turned pale, feeling a heavy weight in her stomach. "Why is this necessary?" she asked nervously. Agent Smith continued, "I think you know why we're here. Don't you?" Lydia stammered, "No. Why?" "I'll show you some examples," Agent Smith replied dryly, and the large screen lit up. Lydia saw herself sitting with Peter Ramsdale plotting to frame Isaac. She fainted. When she regained consciousness, she heard a loud noise. Opening her eyes, she saw the prosecutor wrestling with two men who were handcuffing him. Agent Smith looked at him with contempt. "You think you're going to get away with this? We have months of footage, including conspiracy meetings. The recordings were made in the house with the owner's consent." A week later, Lydia confessed. Ramsdale was formally charged with enough crimes to keep him behind bars for life. Isaac learned that Lydia had been sentenced for making a false statement to the police and perjury. He made it clear that he would ignore anything that might happen to his daughter's mother to avoid leaving his daughter without a family. Isaac went to Ben and told him he wanted to scare Lydia as retribution. Ben got to work, saying they would sue Lydia for $100,000 for each year Isaac was in prison. Ramsdale was to forfeit his family fortune, being sued for $1 million for each year Isaac was jailed, and for damages to his home and neighborhood. The city of Denz was also sued for compensation for Isaac's wrongful imprisonment. City officials quickly agreed to settle. Ramsdale, with his inflated ego, thought the lawsuit would be dismissed. His lawyer did his job but put in minimal effort, tired of Ramsdale's demands. The court ruled in Isaac's favor, and the sheriff lost his fortune, which went into Isaac and Ben's Beck's Con Investments Trust Fund. Lydia was terrified of Isaac's lawsuit. In jail, she had no job, her house was being foreclosed, and she had no way to pay $550,000. Her cellmates ignored her, preferring to sleep on the floor rather than share a cell with her. Lydia heard about an investment program and asked a guard. The guard cynically replied that many prisoners owed her for putting Isaac in prison. Otherwise, the funds would never have been established. Ramsdale had a fit when he learned that Isaac had sued him for $5.5 million and another $500,000 for repairs. He screamed that he would kill Isaac and send the two women to a Russian brothel. Shortly after, he had visitors again, who were not so gentle this time, and Ramsdale screamed in pain. Isaac had been out of prison for a year. Kay too had joined him, and they became fast friends. Isaac's house had been completely renovated, regaining its former glory, though the decorations were still minimal. Meanwhile, he quietly bought every house that came up for sale in the cul-de-sac. One night, Isaac went to bed but soon had to close the window due to a terrible storm. Looking out, he saw Laura and Tim huddled in the doorway, soaking wet and shivering. Angry, he grabbed two raincoats, ran downstairs, and shouted, "What are you thinking? You'll catch your death." "Put this on and come up to the house," Isaac said, handing Laura a raincoat. She seemed ready to refuse, but changed her mind after glancing at Isaac. Once they reached Isaac's house, Laura looked at the ground guiltily. "I'm sorry. I panicked and wasn't thinking." Isaac immediately diffused the situation. "I'm sorry I yelled. That's what worrying about people does to me. What happened?" "The fuse box blew?" "Okay. I'll have someone look at it tomorrow. You and Tim can stay here tonight. I'll change the sheets on the bed and you both can sleep there. I'll sleep in the study. No arguments," Isaac said firmly. He found some t-shirts and showed Laura to the bathroom, telling her and Tim to take a hot shower. As he set up his bed in the study, he suddenly heard a quiet sound and turned around to see Laura standing in the doorway. Trying to hide his embarrassment, he asked gruffly, "Is there anything you need?" "Yes. You're a big dummy. I need to thank you, Laura said, blushing. She kissed Isaac gently on the cheek and asked, "Why on earth would your ex dump you like she did?" "I have no idea. Anyway, she's behind bars now," Isaac replied. "I'm ready to tell you the whole story," he added. Isaac then explained how he had designed and installed redundant security systems as a hobby and hid them so well that the criminals couldn't find them. The outside system was accessible via the internet, which had led to the downfall of the sheriff. The other system was hidden in the house. On the hard drives, he found evidence of his innocence. Finished, he sent Laura to bed. Tomorrow is going to be a busy day. The next morning, a contractor came to inspect Laura's house. K2 came along, and Isaac introduced him as Fabian. Laura's small hand was completely hidden in his large one. Timothy came in next, and they shook hands as well. Fabian laughed. "Careful, you're stronger than you think." The ice was broken. They went inside for coffee, where Fabian whispered to Laura, "Don't drink his coffee without water." Laura giggled. "I know. I was shocked this morning at what he calls coffee." The contractor returned with bad news. Laura's house was practically uninhabitable due to neglect. Laura began to cry. Isaac got straight to the point. "K2, can you put a lock on my bedroom and give Laura the keys?" He looked at Laura and asked, "Who's your landlord?" "My ex," Laura hiccuped, "and he won't sell it to me." Isaac looked back at K2. "Take care of that too. Have it forensically examined before offering a price." Laura looked surprised. "Why the lock?" "Because, according to the neighbors, I still have a bad attitude toward women. Until what time do you have to work?" "I don't have to work today. They pay me a pittance and demand 150% effort. I can barely make ends meet, and I can't find another job because of my ex." "What kind of work do you do?" "I studied organization and business. Now I'm a secretary in a pool with other secretaries who provide extra services." Isaac pondered as he walked. He really liked Laura, who was fighting hard for her son despite her ex-husband's sabotage, and he needed a secretary. The workload was growing rapidly, and he wanted more free time. "I need someone to help me full-time. The workload is overwhelming, and if I don't keep up, I'll become a prisoner of my own trust. Would you be willing to work for me here or from your own home once it's renovated?" Laura blushed and felt warm. "I don't have any references, and I need to take care of Timothy." Sensing her hesitation, Isaac gave her another nudge. "If you work here, I'll set aside a room for Tim. He'll have his own little office, and I'll help him with his homework. It will free you up, and it will be good for me, too. I'll be working with someone I know and like." "Like me?" Laura asked, surprised. "Why else would I care about you so much if you were just a neighbor? You'd get a room at a long-stay hotel. Please say yes. Anna and Ben will help you with the details." Laura jumped into Isaac's arms, wrapped her arms around him, and kissed his cheek. "When do I start?" "Now. I suddenly feel like decorating the house and doing lots of other things. I hope you'll stay here while your house is being remodeled." "Yes, and Timothy will be happy too," Laura replied. "I need to quit my old job first. Can I use your phone?" Meanwhile, Timothy had found an old robot that Isaac had made as a hobby. It was one of the few intact things left in the house. He ran over to Isaac holding it. "What is this? Who built this?" Tim asked excitedly. Isaac smiled. "I did. Let's find batteries and a remote control and you can play with it outside." 10 minutes later, the little robot was rolling down the driveway, accompanied by the joyful shouts of an 11-year-old boy. Isaac arranged a babysitter for Tim, and an hour later, he and Laura were on their way to a shopping center. "I quit my job," Laura said. "They weren't happy and offered me a raise and more work," Isaac replied, pulling into the parking lot. "I hope it's too little and too late." "What were they offering?" Laura glanced at Isaac, noticing a glimmer of apprehension on his face. She felt a warmth inside and decided to tease him a little. "What do you have to offer?" she asked. Without missing a beat, Isaac said, "$4,000 a month, free rent, and my undying gratitude." "Deal!" Laura exclaimed cheerfully. "But free rent? You haven't got a house yet." "Don't underestimate Fabian's negotiating skills," Isaac replied with a grin. "He'll ask nicely." 2 weeks later, Laura was amazed at how fast and efficient the ex-con crews were. She was moving some of her belongings back into her now rent-free home, but she did so with some sadness. Laura was growing more and more attached to Isaac. Their working relationship was firmly established. Each day began with an hour-long cardio and fitness workout, a regimen Isaac had adopted in prison under Fabian's guidance. Laura struggled at first, but soon noticed a difference in her fitness. One evening, Tim announced that he had a new math teacher. Laura, half listening to her son's happy chatter, was thinking about Isaac and how to show her feelings for him when she noticed a car in her driveway. She wasn't expecting visitors and watched for a few moments. The driver didn't get out, but then her attention was caught by Timothy, who was enthusiastically talking about building his own robot with Isaac's help. Half an hour later, she looked out again and saw the car still there, the driver still inside. Curious, she walked up to the driver's side and knocked on the window. Tommy, who had gotten a job as a math teacher at a nearby school after her mother was sentenced for perjury, had been watching her father's house. She had to stop studying artificial intelligence and get a job. She heard Tim talking enthusiastically about building a robot and felt a prick of jealousy. She used to do that with her father before her mother got involved with that creep. When she found Tim's address, she had to find out if her dad was helping Tim and had gone back to that house. An hour later, she was sitting in her car with a small pair of binoculars watching her dad. She was shocked at how much older he looked and couldn't hold back her tears. One day, her mother had written Isaac a letter asking for forgiveness and if they could be friends. Isaac's reply came through his lawyer. "Only if you give me back 5.5 years of my life. Otherwise, stay away." Suddenly, there was a knock on the window. Tommy was brought out of her reverie and tearfully rolled down the window. Laura looked at her and said, "You're not okay. Come inside to calm down. You can't drive now." Tommy, losing her balance for a moment, allowed Laura to lead her inside. Tim greeted her. "Hello, Miss Tommy. Why have you come to visit us?" Laura kept her composure. "I'm Laura Winstead, and you are?" "Thomasina Manor. I teach Tim math at school. Please call me Tommy." A light bulb went on in Laura's head. "Manor? You mean—" Tommy nodded sadly. "Yes, my father. I haven't seen him in over 6 years," she said, slowly sinking to the floor. Laura picked Tommy up and sat her down on the couch. She told Tim to get some water and then added, "Tim, please go to your room so we can talk." Tim obeyed immediately and Laura turned to Tommy. "We need to talk. But first, you're in no condition to drive, so you're going to stay here tonight. If there's one thing I learned from your father, it's to help when help is needed." Tommy breathed a sigh of relief. She finally had someone to talk to, even if it was a stranger. She looked questioningly at Laura, who understood. "I know almost everything. The only thing your father never mentioned was your part in the affair, only that you were adopted by Peter Ramsdale." Tommy shook her head vigorously. "I was never adopted. I refused, and eventually they gave up. When I realized what they did to my father, I stopped talking to my mother. I left that house when I turned 18. I couldn't call it home anymore. Shortly after that, my mom and Ramsdale separated." Laura had to process this information. Isaac was convinced his daughter had been adopted. After a while, she said, "I think we need to find a way to convince your father to let you back into his life. I want him to be as happy as possible. He still has a picture of you in his desk drawer." The tone of Laura's words made Tommy look closely at her and realize the truth. She touched Laura's hand and said softly, "We haven't known each other long, but one thing is obvious. You love him, don't you?" A flustered Laura blushed and replied, "Yes, but I don't know if I have any chance with him. Maybe I can help. I can tell you about my dad from my own experience and from what my mom told me before she was brainwashed by Ramsdale. My mom once said that underneath that shell is a very shy man who doesn't want to impose himself on a woman. The more he likes her, the more he keeps his distance." Laura perked up. "Really? He's always attentive. I sometimes find flowers on my desk or things I liked at the store delivered the next day." Tommy smiled. "He loves you. My mom also told me she had to be very persistent to get close to him. Please take care of my father. I want him to be happy. I want to see him so badly, but I don't have those 5 years he asked for." Tommy's tears threatened to spill over again. Laura had a difficult night after an emotional evening. She now knew more about Isaac and needed to find a way to break through his shield. She tried to devise a plan, coming up with a few scenarios but quickly discarding them. Eventually, she decided to start dressing more provocatively. The next morning, Isaac was already working out when Laura walked into his small gym. He was pleasantly surprised to see her. She was wearing her usual sweatpants, but her loose t-shirt had been replaced by a tight top showing off her cleavage. He noticed she was starting to tighten up and had lost some weight. Halfway through the workout, Laura decided to test Tommy's assertion. "Can I have the day off? We're working hard and I need to relax and get some new clothes. I'd like to go shopping today. Tim is at school until 5. "That's a great idea," Isaac exclaimed. "Do you mind if I join you? I want to spend the day away from the office, too." That was exactly what Laura wanted to hear, but she pretended to mull it over. She noticed Isaac's expression change from pleased to somewhat concerned, and quickly replied, "I'd like that very much. Some friendly company would be nice. You can help me choose." "Are you sure? I won't be offended if you want to go alone. I'm also your employer, after all," Isaac said, giving her an out. "Yes, you are, but you're also a dear friend," she replied and kissed him lightly on the cheek. "But there's one hard rule." "Oh? What rule?" "No talking about work," Laura said with a slight smirk. Seeing Isaac smile, Laura thought, "Mission accomplished." "Now let's finish the training," she said. "Yes, boss," joked Isaac. An hour later, they were on their way to Tim's school. After dropping Tim off, they headed to the mall. They arrived early, so Isaac and Laura took their time drinking coffee before going shopping. Laura firmly told Isaac that he should get rid of his convict image and start wearing clothes that would present him in a better light. Once Isaac was sorted, Laura began to have fun. She got rid of what she called mama's fat. Without the financial stress, she became more confident and relaxed. In the fitting room mirror, Laura admired her new look and smiled. She found another dress she liked, but it was beyond her budget, so she sighed and put it back. She then went to the sportswear department, missing Isaac's gesture to the saleswoman. After lunch, they had a friendly argument about who would pay the bill, and Laura lost. As they walked back to the car with bags and boxes, Laura never noticed the extra bag among their purchases, which included a bottle of her favorite perfume. At home, Laura unpacked and discovered the surprise items. Tommy had been right. She felt a warm glow. "I really have a chance," she thought. The next day, she went to the gym wearing another new top. By the third day, she was getting desperate. At the end of her workout, her eyes filled with tears. Isaac, noticing her distress, immediately came to her side. "What's the matter, Laura? You're crying. Is there anything I can do to help?" Laura decided to be direct. "I have a problem with a man." "Is he hurting you?" Isaac asked, concerned. "In a way. The problem is that I love him. I love him, and I'm actually in love with him," Laura continued. She saw Isaac swallow and turn pale, but pressed on. "The thing is, he's not responding to my advances. Now, I don't know what to do." "Do you have any ideas?" Isaac stammered. "Laura, you've come to the wrong person for advice, but I'll try. If this man is so thick-headed, knock some sense into him. He would be extremely stupid to ignore you. You're smart, beautiful, and have a big heart. Be as direct as you can. He'll come to his senses." Sitting on the exercise bench, Laura blushed and said, "I'm going to be as clear as I can be. Isaac, are you going to make love to me here or in your bed?" Isaac was stunned. "What? You mean me?" "Yes, you. You stupid man, you," Laura replied. "Laura, are you in love with me? Really?" Isaac asked, bewildered. Her nod and smile made him smile back. "Ooh, that makes me so happy. Laura, please believe me, I love you too. I've loved you since you were sitting in bed in the doorway." "Then why didn't you tell me? You fool!" "I couldn't. I'm your employer, and I didn't want you to feel obligated. Just a friendly face and a cup of coffee was enough," Isaac explained. Laura laughed. "Sometimes you're too decent for your own good. Now, about my question, here or in the bedroom?" At that moment, they both ran to the bedroom. Much later, they lay on the crumpled bed, having taken a nap. Laura coaxed Isaac to get up. "Isaac, it's time to pick up Tim from school. One of us needs to take a shower." "I'll shower first and go get him," Isaac offered. When she pulled up to the school, Tim was already waiting with Tommy. She sent Tim to the car, and Tommy smirked. "Looks like you got your man. Or is it the other way around? You were walking a little funny." Laura laughed and purred. "Thanks for the tips about your father. You were so right." 6 weeks later, Laura noticed a change in herself. She lacked energy during their workouts, and Isaac began to watch her closely. One morning, she refused coffee, preferring tea, and had to rush to the bathroom when she smelled a cheddar sandwich. Isaac realized something was up. When Laura returned, he told her he was taking the day off to visit a client, though it was a small white lie. As soon as Laura disappeared into her house, he drove to a mall to visit a jeweler. The next morning, Laura felt a little better, but skipped her workout, citing a virus. She showed up at the office at 9:30, expecting to see Isaac, but he was in the workshop. That was unusual. She walked over to her desk and found two small numbered boxes. Opening the first one, she found a beautiful antique pocket watch with a gold chain. Underneath the watch was a note. She unfolded the paper and read, "Time flies by and life is too short to waste." Isaac wondered if his father would approve of him proposing to Laura. He believed she was beautiful inside and out and would only become more so over time. Laura felt warmth spread through her as she opened the second gift with trembling hands. Inside, she found 3 different pregnancy tests. Now she could definitely feel the heat spreading through her body. Pregnant. And Isaac was the first to notice. They had completely forgotten about contraception, she thought warmly. He seemed to accept it readily, maybe even love it. Laura was still confused, her thoughts running in circles. Happiness, anxiety, amazement, all fighting for a place in her mind. She stood there until she heard a quiet cough. Turning around, she saw Isaac standing in the doorway. She blushed deeply and replied modestly, "Yes, my employer can make the offer." Silently, he took her hand and led her outside into the sunshine. He asked loudly and clearly, "Laura Winstead, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes, you idiot. You didn't need to ask formally." "I would have said yes anyway," she replied. That's when she realized about 100 people had witnessed the scene. When he carefully slipped the palladium engagement ring with the emerald-cut diamond on her finger, there were loud cheers and clapping. "My God!" she exclaimed. "It's beautiful!" Tim approached her with a bottle of champagne and 2 flutes. Isaac said, "I've bet on yes, as you can see." Then he turned to the others and said, "All present may have a glass in the garden." When the feast was over, Isaac and Laura went to Isaac's house. Laura was tired from all the emotions, congratulations, and handshakes. They made themselves comfortable in the living room and looked out the large window at the forest. After sitting silently, enjoying each other's company and touch, Isaac asked, "Where do you want to live? Can you live here in the ruins of my old life? Should I build us a new house? This house needs serious repairs, especially with a baby on the way. What do you want to do with your old house?" Laura thought for a moment. "I like this house. It's spacious and has many happy memories. If I can help with the renovation, let's stay here, please. As for my old house, it's yours, so why ask me? When Fabian bought it, I decided to put the papers in your name. It's up to you to decide, but I'd hate to involve strangers. So I'm asking if you know anyone who might want to live there. If you want to sell it, I'll buy it from you," Isaac explained. A chance, a big chance, flashed through Laura's mind, but she didn't want Isaac to feel manipulated. "I'll have to think about it. Maybe I know someone," she replied calmly. The next day, after lunch, Isaac and Laura picked up Tim early from school and headed to the park. Isaac talked about changes he wanted to make to the house, adding a pool with jets, a balcony with a door to the bedroom, and an attached cabin for Tim with its own entrance. He asked if Laura already had a candidate for her house. Laura nodded and took a deep breath. "Yes, there is, and I really hate to offer this to you. Can you promise to listen first, think about it, and then answer? Please trust me on this." Isaac felt apprehensive but replied, "Yes, I will listen first, think, and promise not to snap, but I suspect I won't like it." Laura continued, "Tim has a new math teacher, and he really likes her. She desperately needs somewhere to live. Her current place is in foreclosure, and she has to move out within 2 weeks. Isaac asked, "And what's the problem?" "Her name is Thomasina Manor, and I emphasize Manor, not Ramsdale, as you always thought," Laura explained. Isaac sat stunned, mouth open, unable to make a sound. Finally, almost exploding, he asked, "What?" Laura intervened. "You promised." "You're right," he muttered. Laura took Isaac's hand and softly explained, "She never knew what they were doing to you. She thought the makeup artist was working on her portfolio. Her testimony was falsified by Ramsdale. Every time she went to the authorities to complain and wanted to see you, they blocked her. She was denied because of Ramsdale. The judge was on Ramsdale's payroll, and even before you were sentenced, your ex-wife thought it was only to force you into submission. As Laura spoke, Isaac's face changed colors: red, purple, white. By the time she finished, he was ashen. She held his hands and saw tears streaming down his cheeks. Isaac whispered, "Poor thing. What do we do now?" Confusion clouded his mind, and all he could think of was the nearly 7 years he had lost. Laura kissed him gently, bringing him back from his personal hell. Finally, he snapped back. "Ramsdale will pay for this, and it's going to be a very big bill. Don't do anything stupid, please. I don't want the father of our child back in jail. Yes, all 3 tests were positive. That was another thing I wanted to tell you. I don't want you back in jail," Laura said. Isaac nodded. "I'm not going to do anything illegal with that bastard. But what are we going to do about Tommy?" "Leave that to me. Can you get home in an Uber?" Laura asked. "I can do better than that. The contractor will drive me back. He has to start with a quote for the work on the house. If you agree with them," Isaac replied. Laura smiled. "Your idea sounded great. I trust you completely. Now I'm going to go pick up Tim and Tommy." As she pulled up to the school, Tim came running out and Laura whispered, "Can you call Miss Manor?" Tim ran off and returned a few minutes later with Tommy, who looked a little worried. To ease the tension, Laura smiled and said, "I have a house for you." "Really? And I can afford it?" Tommy asked. "Oh, yes, easily. Hop in and we'll take a look now," Laura replied. Tommy made up her mind and got into the car. Laura drove home, and Tommy was puzzled as they pulled up in front of Laura's house. When Tim jumped out of the car to go inside, Laura said, "Here's your new house." Tommy was totally confused. "What the hell? It's your house." "No, I'm getting married and you can afford it," Laura said. "Seriously?" "All I have to do is meet the owner," Tommy replied warily. "I'm not going to sleep with him," she shouted. Laura laughed loudly. "No, dear, it wouldn't occur to him." Tommy was still stunned. "When will I get to meet your mysterious host? And when can I move in?" "Now and tomorrow. For now, we only need to walk to the house next door. By the way, Tim and I and the little bambino will be living there too," Laura said. Finally, the realization hit Tommy. Laura took great pleasure in looking at Tommy, whose mouth opened and closed before she stammered, My, your father?" "Yes, and he really wants to meet you. We're getting married because your younger half-brother or sister is on the way," Laura chirped happily. Tommy experienced a whole gamut of emotions: jubilation at having a suitable place to live, happiness at being able to see her father, and surprise at becoming a big sister. But there was also excitement, because she didn't know what to say to her father. In the nearly 7 years he had been gone, she had rehearsed entire speeches and thought up scenarios for their reunion. Now she couldn't think of a single one. Laura took Tommy's hand and gently nudged her toward the house. Tim ran ahead and, as usual, knocked loudly on the door. Isaac opened it and said a little nervously, "Hey, big boy, are you alone?" Tim jumped up and replied, "No, Mom is coming with my math teacher. She's going to live in our house." "Really?" Isaac looked at the 2 women and said, "Wow, what a sight. 2 of the most beautiful and important women in my life, side by side." When the women appeared on his doorstep, he whispered with a tremor in his voice, "Tommy, you have become such a beautiful woman. Can I give you a hug?" Tommy almost jumped into his arms with a cry, "Daddy!" They stood for a long time, savoring the moment until Laura called them into the house. Once inside, Tommy looked at her father carefully. He had changed a lot. He looked older than through the binoculars. Wrinkles had appeared on his face, especially around his eyes, giving him a melancholy look. She remembered her father had always seemed a little soft around the waist. Now there was no softness at all, just skin, muscle, and bone. "Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry." Laura interrupted their tearful reunion. "Perhaps you better continue your talk somewhere private while I start dinner. I take it you want to stay for dinner too, Tommy?" Tommy walked over to Laura and hugged her tightly. Thank you so much. I'm so happy now, and it's all thanks to you, Mom. Laura smiled with wet eyes. I will do anything to make my Isaac happy. Now go and talk to Daddy. Isaac and Tommy settled into the living room, finding comfortable chairs and side tables in one corner. Isaac offered Tommy a soft drink and mentioned, "There was no alcohol in prison except what they made themselves. I never touched it. When I got out, I figured I could do without it, but I don't mind if others drink." Tommy nodded and replied, "I don't know where to begin. Are you really offering me Laura's house? I can think of a few complications." Isaac laughed softly. "I've thought of that. The only problem might be the restraining order your mother has against me. I realize she has no place to live when she gets out of jail, and you have plenty of room. Tommy, listen carefully. This is your home because you are Laura's tenant. As such, I can't forbid you from having guests, and I won't. But your mother must keep her distance from me. I don't want her near me. No garden, no front door. She is not welcome here. I will ignore her when I see her in the street. Can you live with that?" Tommy nodded. "I understand, Dad. It's only until she's back on her feet again. There are other reasons I don't want Mom to live with me indefinitely." Isaac raised an eyebrow but remained silent. Tommy took a deep breath and said, "I have a boyfriend and things are serious. I need space and privacy. Really, we haven't gotten along since she went crazy over that jerk. I hope Mom finds a job and a place to live as soon as possible." Isaac picked up on that thought. "Is she still working as an accountant? Maybe I can help her find a job? She should have enough money to pay her rent. I paid almost $500,000 to get rid of her. There should be something left over from that." Tommy shook her head. "No, Dad. She was taken advantage of by that jerk, and now he's completely broke. He had to spend his entire fortune on compensation. Yes, she's still a CPA, and she's also a paralegal now. Karma can be a bitch. I'll try to get her a job, but don't tell her about it. I assume you're visiting her in prison." Tommy nodded affirmatively, and at that moment Laura announced that dinner was ready. A few weeks later, Isaac and his daughter were chatting in the living room of the big house. He asked Tommy, "When was the last time you visited your mother?" "I think it was shortly before I came to live here. Remember, she's your mother. You have her alone, so please keep in touch with her. You may regret it if you don't," Isaac said. Before Tommy could respond, there was a loud knock on the door. Isaac said, "It's Fabian. He's the only one who knocks like that." He went to the door and Tommy heard the rumble of Fabian's voice saying, "Doc, let me introduce you to my son Julian." Hearing this, she ran out of the room to Laura. Meanwhile, Fabian continued, "He makes me proud, even though his father was in prison. He became a teacher. When he told me he wanted to see you, I thought I'd like to see you too." Julian, with his beet-red face, stammered, "It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. My father has told me a lot about you, but actually I've come to ask you something." "Okay, ask away," Isaac said. There was a very awkward silence. Julian stared at his feet, then said quietly, "In private, please." Isaac led him into the den and found that Tommy had already left. He directed Julian to a chair and asked, "What can I do for you, Julian?" Julian hurriedly said, "Sir, I want to ask Thomasina to marry me. We have been together for a long time, and I think it's time to make her my wife. With your blessing, that's what I have come for, sir, to ask for your blessing." Isaac smiled from ear to ear. He called out, "Thomasina Manor, I know you're listening. Come out of hiding and introduce yourself." Tommy ran into the den, smiling. "Yes, Dad. This nice young man wants to marry you and asks for my blessing. Shall I give it?" Isaac asked. "Yes, please, Papa. I would like that very much," Tommy replied. Isaac rose from his chair and held out his hand. "You have my blessing, son. Take good care of my daughter. It's time to celebrate." Isaac headed to follow Julian into the living room when Tommy detained him. "Dad?" "Yes, dear. Julian doesn't know yet. I'll tell him in a minute. But right now we're in a bit of a hurry. You're going to be a grandfather in about 7 months. The doctor confirmed it this morning." "Tommy, girl, you make me so happy I could burst. Do you want a double wedding with Laura and me together?" Isaac asked. "That would be great. We'll discuss it later when Fabian's gone," Tommy replied. They walked to the living room where Laura was grinning, and Fabian looked completely unconcerned with what was going on. When Isaac sat down, Julian said to Fabian with a big, happy smile, "Dad, may I introduce you to my future wife? This is Thomasina Manor. Mr. Manor has just given us his blessing. May we have yours as well?" Fabian's face reflected amazement. He was completely stunned. "Yes, of course, if that's what you want." Isaac put his arm around him. "Come on, big friend. We are now a family, in more ways than one. Who would have thought it?" Across from them, Julian looked puzzled. Tommy, with a very happy face, said to Julian, "Yep, you're going to be a dad. When we decided to stay together, we also decided we wanted to have kids while we were still young, so we stopped using condoms." Julian was surprised. "So, Mr. Small, you will have a daughter and a grandchild," he said. 2 weeks later, Lydia sat in front of her daughter. "You look amazing, Tommy." "Yes, Mom. I have a place to live and I'm going to get married. Life is treating me well." "Oh, that's good. Where do you live and when is the wedding?" Tommy gave the address and enjoyed the look on her mother's face when she recognized it. "It's near the house where Isaac used to live." "How can you afford it?" Lydia asked, puzzled. "It's next to Dad's. He still lives there. I found him, and we were reunited." Lydia, despite herself, became curious. "How did you find him?" "Just luck. His roommate's son, Tim, is a student of mine. He showed me the little robot and told me he had made it with his neighbor. When I noticed the address, I went to see what it looked like. Laura saw me following her and came out and asked me what I was doing. I explained, and a few weeks later she and I were in touch. To answer your question, my father owns all 5 houses in this neighborhood. That's why I can afford it." Lydia fell silent, trying to comprehend the information she had received. She asked timidly, "When is the wedding?" "We're waiting for you to get out of jail. Since you're still officially my mother, you're invited." Lydia perked up. She would see Isaac again, and he couldn't turn down his daughter's wedding. Maybe she would try to talk to him. Who knows? She asked her daughter, "Can I stay with you when I'm released? I have nowhere to go. The house is sold. I need a new job, too." Tommy took a deep breath. She didn't want Lydia to know that her father had already taken care of the job. She simply said, "You can live with me until the baby comes. By then, I'll need the room. As for work, have you talked to ex-com services? They specialize in helping ex-convicts get jobs or businesses." "Your baby? Are you expecting a child? Why didn't you tell me that right away? From the way you're talking to me, I think you're still mad at me. Can't you forgive me?" Lydia asked, stunned. Tommy replied, without holding back her anger, "Mom, it's only because Dad tells me that I only have one mom and that I have to keep in touch. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen me the last time you went to jail. You cost me more than 6 precious years with Dad. And why? Because you were too selfish and cowardly to do the right thing. And while we're on the subject, I talked to Dad's girlfriend a lot about everything. I really don't understand how you fell for that jerk when you had my dad. How could you do that?" It was Lydia's turn to be stunned by such an onslaught. She remained silent. It was clear to her that she was going to have to deal with serious issues with Tommy. It also came as a shock to her that Isaac had a girlfriend. She had never thought that Isaac could move on so quickly after his release. She also didn't expect him to go back to the house that had brought him so much misery. She wondered where he had gotten so much money to renovate it. When Tommy left and Lydia returned to her cell, Tommy's harsh words still echoed in her head. She had left Peter almost immediately when it became clear that she had been fooled and the money had disappeared. He wanted Isaac out of the way, not only because he needed her, but because he needed a place for his smuggling activities. Lydia had tried to be a good mother to Tommy and thought that Tommy's almost hostile attitude toward her had to do with puberty. Now she realized how much she had hurt her girl, who seemed to be much more attached to her father than she had thought. Tommy's words had deeply wounded her soul. Lydia was angered that Tommy was pregnant and hadn't told her right after announcing that she was getting married. Lydia realized that she had a very deep and wide chasm to cross before Tommy would open up to her again. Lydia sat in her room at Tommy's house. It wasn't a warm welcome, but it was a welcome. Tommy didn't hug her, but at least said, "Welcome back, Mom. You're our guest. May I introduce you to Julian Small, my future husband and father of our child." The introductions were made, and Tommy continued, "You are welcome to use everything in this house while you're looking for a job. You can use the laptop I put in your room. Have you contacted Xanthi yet?" Lydia looked down at her feet and replied, I tried, but for some reason they weren't interested in me. It seemed like I was banned. Julian chimed in. I'll ask Dad. Maybe he knows why you weren't contacted. He has a final say in hiring through X.com services. He also made sure you would be treated respectfully and no harm would come to you. Otherwise, you would be in for a very rough ride. Isaac is highly respected. Lydia was puzzled. What does your father have to do with my ex-husband? Tommy interrupted her. Mom, don't even think about it. Dad wants nothing to do with you. Nothing. You understand? Tommy's tone was firm, more like an order than a question. Julian continued, Isaac and my dad, Fabian, are close. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place for Lydia. That's why it was easier for her. She decided to relax for a while, but deep down she wanted her life back with Isaac. Tommy knocked and informed Lydia that she had a visitor. Startled, Lydia went downstairs. A huge man stood in the hallway. Julian was tall, but this man was just as tall and twice as wide. Good afternoon. I am Fabian Small. He introduced himself in a low, rumbling voice. Julian tells me you have not received a response to your job request. That's right. I realized I was to be avoided like the plague by everyone. Fabian nodded. You were to be avoided. Your association with Peter Ramsey puts you at risk. I asked Isaac to speak out on the matter. He felt responsible since his evidence led to your imprisonment. When Ramsey found out who delivered the evidence, he started threatening you and my future daughter-in-law. So we had to put you in some sort of isolation. Now I hear you're looking for work, is that correct? Yes, I was a CPA and worked as a paralegal until we were both arrested. Paralegal and accountant. Good. I run a company that provides security services and systems. My company, XCon Investments, needs an accountant. I can offer you a decent salary. We'll hire you for a month. If you prove capable and compatible, you'll get a contract. We'll also provide accommodation rent-free. But there's one condition. You must not attempt to contact Isaac. I am your immediate supervisor. Can you agree to that? Lydia sighed. I have no choice, do I? I agree, of course. You have a choice. You can refuse, Fabian replied. Lydia was shocked at how much Isaac had shut her out, even though he cared about her immediate needs. Why did Isaac shut me out completely? She asked. The answer is simple. We provide support for all former prisoners. The exception is Isaac will have nothing to do with you for obvious reasons, Fabian responded directly. Lydia was taken aback by his bluntness. I agree to the terms, she said with a tremor in her voice. Good, Fabian said. Tomorrow Julian will drop you off at our office to sign your contract and go through HR. We'll arrange a small rental car for you. Our garage can provide a decent car for a reasonable price, but that's for next month. With that, Fabian said goodbye and walked away, leaving Lydia confused. She was about to return to her room when she noticed the binoculars. Looking through them, she saw Fabian enter Isaac's house and greet her ex-husband. She didn't have enough time to get a proper look at Isaac, so she placed the binoculars next to the window and began to make a list of things she needed for a fresh start. It was almost dark when Lydia heard a car pulling up. Tommy and Julian were out for dinner, so they wouldn't be home anytime soon. Looking out the window, she saw the car stop in front of Isaac's door. Isaac got out, followed by a very pregnant woman with light brown curly hair. The woman hugged Isaac, and even through the binoculars, Lydia could see the sparks between them. She envied the woman and felt terribly jealous, angry, and lost at the same time. This should be her man, her house. It took her some time to come to her senses. After all, she was the reason why that woman was standing there and not herself. Despairing, she sat down. Lydia realized what she had done was terribly foolish, but surely there must be a way to get back into Isaac's heart. With only 2 weeks until Tommy's wedding, she had to find a way. Lydia tried to find out as much as she could about Isaac. Using the binoculars, she observed his graying hair, straight posture, and slender frame. She watched him interact with Timothy, feeling a pang of envy. Isaac was so good with children. She tried to ask Tommy about Isaac's pregnant fiancée, but was always rebuffed. Neither Tommy, Julian, nor Fabian answered her questions directly. The day before Tommy's wedding, she learned that Isaac and Laura were also getting married. Lydia was shocked. She had been invited to Tommy's wedding and couldn't refuse, but the thought of witnessing her ex-husband's wedding was a blow to her ego. She felt devastated. All her hopes of reuniting with Isaac were gone. That woman was pregnant with Isaac's child. Why hadn't she seen it coming? She felt foolish. Lydia gave final instructions to the movers who were taking her belongings to the house provided by ex-con investments. Isaac had made an exception for Lydia to attend the wedding and the after-party at his and Laura's home. The dinner was held in a friendly atmosphere, and the food was exceptional. Lydia was seated between two young men who animatedly discussed music and theater with her. When the dancing began, Lydia sat in a corner, feeling lost and dejected. She noticed that hardly any alcohol was consumed, which surprised her. The traditional dances started. The bride and groom, the father of the bride with the bride, the mother of the bride with... Lydia saw Julian looking at Isaac, who nodded slightly. Julian walked over to Lydia and asked politely, "Ma'am, would you do me the honor of this dance?" Lydia stood up, took Julian's hand, and walked to the dance floor. She felt uplifted as they danced. She loved dancing, but hadn't done so in years. Julian was a good dancer. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Tommy and Laura talking to Isaac, who looked concerned. When the dance with Julian ended, she was about to return to her corner when she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Isaac's face up close. His eyes were deeply wrinkled and sad, showing signs of much suffering. She thought, "My God, what happened to him?" Then it hit her. "It's me. I happened to him. I'm such a fool." In that moment, she lost all self-esteem and confidence, physically shuddering at the thought of what she had done to him. She realized Isaac was holding out his hand, waiting patiently. "Are you asking me?" she asked in a small, timid voice. Isaac repeated, "Will you honor me, Lydia, by dancing this dance?" Without another word, Lydia clung to Isaac and sobbed. Not long into the dance, she regained her composure. Gathering all her remaining courage, she whispered, "Isaac, I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I know you must hate me now. I'm sorry I can't give you your years back." Isaac replied, "Lydia, I'm glad you're remorseful, but we are dancing because the two women I love most in the world asked me to show you compassion. I did for you a little of what you did to me, and you felt a little of the pain I felt. I hated you until I met Laura. She filled the void with her love, and all feelings for you evaporated. We dance here as strangers with a shared past. I will no longer avoid you because of our daughter and soon-to-be grandchild, but it will be a long time before I can call you a friend. Mind you, I have two gatekeepers who will be watching you like hawks with sharp claws, ready to use them if you try anything inappropriate. Now let's enjoy the dance together." Lydia almost inhaled the touch of the man she once loved. He felt different. Whereas before he had been a little soft to the touch, now his shoulders were bony and hard, his movements betrayed strength and endurance. She remembered how capable he'd been in the past and marveled at her own stupidity. She had paid a steep price. Instead of helping her daughter on the most beautiful day of her life, she was barely tolerated as a guest. Her father's fiancée was acting as her daughter's mother. They were so close, Lydia noticed. Julian had asked her to dance, but it needed Isaac's permission, and her daughter and his fiancé had to convince Isaac to let it happen. Depression descended on Lydia like a dark shadow, cold and inescapable. She shuddered and clung to the man she had betrayed and lost. She mourned all she had thrown away. Isaac saw the change in her from a proud woman to a broken and insecure one. He was done with her. Now she had to fight for herself, just as he had. He whispered in her ear, "There are people who will support and help you. I've given you the basics. The rest is up to you." The dance ended. Tommy walked over and said, "I can see this has been very emotional for you. Would you like to stay the night? I don't think you should drive right now. I don't want to lose my mom. Or should I arrange for someone to drive you home?" Lydia accepted the offer for a ride, and Ben and Anna drove her. Before they arrived, Anna turned to Lydia and said, "You are alone and friendless. You did wrong, and you will pay for it for a long time. Tonight you finally realized what you did to Isaac. Instead of facing the consequences, you chose an easier path. Isaac completely destroyed Ramsdale. That man is having a rough time in prison. But Isaac doesn't want to deprive his daughter of a sane mother. That's why we're offering you counseling. It will help you understand why you went wrong and how to deal with it. Think about it. If you agree, tell Fabian." When Lydia arrived home, she entered the dark house, took off her coat, and sank onto the sofa. In the darkness, she let go. She began to sob as her emotions overwhelmed her. Remorse and a deep sense of loss came to the forefront, and it was all her fault. Isaac had been hurt, but had moved on and found new happiness. Now it was up to her to try to do the same. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.